Hey, what is going on guys? It is Young here, and today I'm back in another Fortnite video, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys one of my #1 tips here for Season 8. This is going to help you guys win more gunfights, win a lot more games, and as well just be able to clutch out any sort of games, and as well win any type of fight. So a very useful tip and also a much needed tip for everybody playing here in Season 8. And before we get into the video, I have a V-Buck giveaway. I'm going to be giving away V-Bucks at 125,000 subscribers. So if you want to enter that giveaway, all you have to do is to drop a like on this video. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Turn on my notifications and as well leave a comment down below of your Xbox gamer tag, PSN gamer tag, or Epic account. And I will be picking the winners of this giveaway as soon as I hit 125,000 subscribers. So make sure you guys subscribe if you haven't already. And as well, if you guys want to add me and support me as a creator in the item shop, all you have to do is go over to the item shop, go down to support a creator, type in my code. My code is Young Humor, and you guys will have me added and supported as a creator. I really do appreciate everyone who does. And alright guys, let's get right to the video. Alright, so in this video, I want to give you guys one of my #1 tips here for Season 8, and this applies to everyone if you want to be able just to win a lot more games, and as well just win out your gunfights. Just pretty much everything. This is a must needed tip for everybody in this game. And there's been one problem in particular that I've seen that's been really bad for me, and it's pretty much started right after they take out HP and mats per kill, and that is just not having enough materials. That's just the #1 thing that really screws me over in the early game, or sometimes in the mid game. I could be running around trying to play a little bit too aggressive and only having like 100, 200, or maybe even 300 materials, and trying to win out a lot of fights with that many mats is going to be very difficult, especially if you're going against someone with a grenade launcher, minigun, AR, SMG, just pretty much anyone who's going to be spraying a ton. And so with that being said, I really do think the #1 problem and the #1 thing that a lot of people need to work on when it comes to just being a lot better and winning more games in Fortnite is just learning how to conserve your mats properly. And there's definitely a lot of things that I can talk about when it comes to doing that. So I'm going to go in depth and talk about a lot of different ways that you can conserve mats and just not burn through as many materials. Because trust me, in the early game, unless it's a game like here, for whatever reason I killed a guy and he ended up having like 400 or 500 mats, I guess he was just farming up the whole time. But pretty much this is a rare occasion. I'm never going to have mats in the early game. As you can see in pretty much my last few videos, I'm coming at it tilted maybe like 300 materials and running around in tilted maybe like 50, 60, or 100, because I really don't have a ton of materials. But there is a lot of ways that you guys can conserve materials without having to burn through your entire stash, because going into a gunfight against either a good player or a spammer, like I said, is really going to burn through your mats, and you just want to be prepared just in case you run into those type of players, because trust me, there's going to be a lot of players in this game that you're going to see just constantly spamming at you, and there's going to be absolutely nothing that you can do about it other than just try to have a good mat count and just have enough mats to hold them off. So just knowing when to use more mats or knowing when to use least mats is going to be very important, because there's going to be a lot of fights where you're going to have to burn through a lot more materials than others, and sometimes you maybe could be even burning materials without even knowing it. Maybe you only need to do one thing and maybe you're doing two. So right here is just a quick example. It's kind of a smaller example, and basically this guy's on the other side of the hill, and I could have ran over to use and built up that way, and it probably would have cost me a good 200-300 mats depending on if that guy was spraying at me or not. But instead I just used my launch pad. It got over to the player a lot quicker, and as well I can use the launch pad afterwards, and pretty much it did save me a good 100 to 200 mats just right there, just because I used the launch pad instead of just running over and having the guy on top just spam at me the entire way up. So that did definitely save me a few more mats, which could potentially really help me out in that mid to late game. But from what I've seen, probably one of the biggest ways people waste materials in this game is, say if they need to ramp up to someone and they're not even looking at them, it could be just the difference between only single ramping, maybe having a floor and a ramp, or even having a wall and a ramp, a wall and a floor. And there really is just a lot of different combinations of builds that you can use when you're ramping up to someone. But before the patch, I would say just about 9 out of 10 times I was using the floor, ramp, and wall technique every single time when I was rushing up to someone, just because I knew right after that gunfight I was going to pick up at minimum 150 materials, and most of the time a lot of people have a little bit extra mats, especially if they got a few kills. So more than likely I was going to pick up 4 or 5 even more materials from that player, so I didn't have to worry about wasting too many mats, because I was going to get it right back. But without that, not a lot of people are carrying a ton of mats unless they're in the very late game. So I'm not going to be stacked on materials the entire game unless you're very smart with it. And just for an example right here, you can see this player is just doing constant 90s and not even looking at me. So instead of using the floor ramp and wall, I pretty much only did a single ramp up because I didn't need to use all that extra materials because the player wasn't even looking at me. He was just focused on doing 90s all the way up. And as you can see, right after I kill this guy, I pick up probably like 7 materials from that player because he burned through all of his materials. And say in the same fight, if we had the exact same amount of mats, I would have for sure won that gunfight every single time because as you can see, when I was single ramping up, I spent maybe 50 and I put the cone, so probably 60 or 70 mats total. I really wasn't burning through mats at all, but this player was burning through so many mats, doing a ton of constant double 90s. He probably been through like I don't even know, probably 300 plus materials just right there, and I only went through like 60 or 70. So as you can see, I played it a lot smarter in that situation, and even if we had the exact same amount of mats, I would have for sure won because he would have ran out of mats quicker and I would just had a complete advantage on that player. So as you can see, I only had a single ramp up because he wasn't even looking at me. But as well, at the exact same time, you have to be smart with it because if you're only building up with a single ramp, even if you start halfway up building with a ramp and a wall, he can just look at the bottom and shoot at your ramp and he can knock you down instantly. So one thing that you can do that's very smart and also very effective that I used right in that situation as well is, even though I was single ramping up to that player the entire time, he could have easily shot me out. But one thing that I did that would have made it nearly impossible for him to shoot me out, even if I was putting my walls a little bit later, is as you can see, when I was ramping up, I was trying very hard to, as quick as possible, connect my builds to his builds. Because as you can see, when I was ramping up, I was connecting my builds, so even if he would have tried to shoot me out, my builds would have been connected to his, and I could have easily caught myself and it wouldn't have made a huge difference. So doing something like that, even if you're single ramping up, maybe if you're not building or using as many materials, as long as you're connecting enough builds, it's going to be very difficult for the other player to shoot you out. And that's going to be one of the main reasons why you'd even want to build a ton at all, is because you're worried about people shooting you out, maybe getting some extra tags and you that way. So if you can get really good on just understanding where to connect builds, maybe it could be to other buildings, to mount to other people's builds. If you can get really good at connecting a lot of builds together, it's going to be very difficult for other players to shoot you out, and you're going to have a lot more mats throughout the entirety of the game. And as you can see in the end game, I'm doing pretty good amounts. I have 400 wood, 600 brick, and as well 400 steel. So I'm doing very well on mats, and probably in a situation like this, I can burn through a little bit more mats than I could in the mid game when I had a little bit less. And one thing that's really important to notice is I found it very true for me. The hardest time I had was mats was in the very beginning of the game, because it really is a lot harder to get mats because they took out the 40% buff to farming rate. So you're going to have to mine a ton of structures, a ton of structures to get the amount of mats that you need. So when it comes to the early game, if you want to be able to conserve a lot more mats, or at least not get screwed over for having no mats, one thing that you can do that's very effective is you can rotate from building to building. You don't want to just run onto the middle of the open like before, because after you got like 1 or 2 kills, you could run to the open to buildings. You kind of just really have to play off of different walls and different edges, because if you get shot up from multiple directions, multiple different buildings, it's gonna be very hard to do anything if you're kind of stuck in the open. So you want to make sure you're at least a few feet from another building, in which if you get shot from a different direction, you have some place to go to. Otherwise, like I said, it's gonna be very difficult to do anything, and just having no mats in the beginning of the game, only having like 50 or 60 mats, is gonna be very problematic, and you're not gonna be able to do a whole lot, and a lot of times it's gonna end up costing you the game. And that was one thing that was happening to me earlier when I was playing. I died probably 6 or 7 times off spawn because I was playing a little bit too aggressive. I wasn't playing as smart as I needed to, and I should have been rotating from building to building. And so that's just one thing that I've been having to work on in my game, and it's something that I used to do a ton back in the day before the HP and mats were in the game. But since I took it out, I had to change up my playstyle so much. There's been a lot of things that I can't do anymore, and that's just one of those things. I have to play a lot smarter and just know how to play it that way. So that's just one of the things I think is really important that everyone should try to do in the early game if you want to be able to win a lot more and just not get screwed over to having no mats, because in the early game, more likely than not, you're going to have no mats. So knowing how to play without mats is going to be very, very important and allow you to win a lot more games. And with that being said, that's about for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys liked it. If you could drop a like on this video, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Turn on my notifications to be notified for every single new video. And alright guys, I'll see you next video.